Hey, Beniamin, thanks for your work in week two. Wanted to send you a quick reply video. First, just to speak here to the conversation in this second forum, I think you're right, actually, to see that my interpretation, I think others, while warning against a certain take on what Paul is doing as like a universal indictment of human beings as sinners, still end up saying something that has universal implications. So I think you're right about that. And maybe that needs to be more explicit in what I'm saying, because what Paul is saying about all human beings is that they are all without authority from God or anything else for that matter to act as judges of one another, to rule over each other. This is not something that God authorizes, you might say. So I think it's just good that you're pointing out that I think you did this in a comment on somebody else's response. And this relates then to another thought I think that you've had, which is um, that I think you asked this in someone else's response. Isn't some form of judgment inevitable? And I think that's also a good insight of yours that we're not going to be able to get away from uh, saying certain things are wrong, that we shouldn't live in certain ways, that we should live in other ways. Um, we are going to be involved in distributing power, organizing ourselves as communities and societies, upholding some behaviors and even people as examples. And other people we're going to find are disciplined in various ways. You find Paul doing this himself in his letters. So we don't want to be cheap in this talk about uh, Paul's opposing human judgment. So what I think I want to add, this becomes clear later in the letter, is that the kind of judgment that we are going to be involved in, the way that we distribute power, the way that we identify what is unjust or sinful and go about addressing it. The key is for Paul is that this is not done self-righteously, nor is it done as if it were the kind of ability of one group to be the ruling authority over another. Whatever uh, governance we're going to be involved in, whatever ruling out of certain behaviors, whatever healthy judgment you might say is going to characterize our lives, it has to be for Paul something that is, you might say, suffused with the solidarity of Christ with sinners, the solidarity of us as communities with one another in the midst of the injustice that we are facing, that we might be identifying in one another. Um, that for Paul is key to being able to address injustice, is that it is addressed not hypocritically, not self-righteously, but you might say Christologically, according to the gospel, God's self-revelation as gracious, as merciful, as mingling God's own future with human corruption so as to share God's life with us, to love us while we were still God's enemies. This is the way that the justice of God is revealed from faith to faith in the world. So I think you're onto something with this kind of concern that I see in what you're writing. So I just wanted to kind of vindicate that myself. One other thing I want to say about Kimber Well and Johnson Hodge, you are right that they are opposing the way that Christians have divided uh, the audience of Romans or thought about the issue in terms of Jews against Gentiles. But something I think I want you to look carefully at in what they're saying is they don't want to eliminate the relevance of ethnicity. They want to complicate what ethnicity means. So for them, there is a sense in which some of the ethnic particulars of Jewish life in relation to God are indeed what Paul is commending to this non-Jewish audience of Romans as well as to us. We are in the midst of being adopted by the God of the Jews, following Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, as our Lord. learning the law of Moses as, at least in some sense, the law guiding our life. These have sometimes been conceived as non-ethnic things, as if they were separable from Jewish ethnic particulars. But what Kimberbell and Johnson Hodge are arguing is that that's not actually true, that they are part of ethnic Jewish life. And so what we want to get away from is pretending that we can be ethnically neutral, claim to be attached only to something universal, and deny that our own ethnic particulars or Jewish ethnic particulars are relevant to who we are, to the life that we're living. So, more we could say about that, feel free to reply, but I thought that would just be something to think about a little bit more with the article by Johnson, Hodge, and Kimber. Well, thanks again for some thoughtful, probing work here in week 2.